Okay, let's give you some updated rankings for the 2023 fantasy football season.
That's right,
the
baby.
running back position, because obviously there's been some big news recently with Dalvin Cook, Alexander Madison. So we're going to give you just an updated look in case you're doing drafts at the moment. Do us a favor, drop a like to show some love. Subscribe if you like Dynasty content. And if you want up-to-date rankings that, continually change, then go ahead and use our code LAND, LAND, at flockfantasy.com/land. You get our rankings and all your favorite content creators' rankings and articles. So there are 5 tiers today. We're going to look at probably the top 24 or so.
Yes.
Maybe it extends actually into the top 30. But let's see how we go. So why don't you start us off in tier 5, Badake? Who have you got here in tier 5?
Yeah, tier 5, let's start off easy. I have DeAndre Swift in this tier. I'm not sure where you have him. I think a lot of people have question marks. What is this offense going to look like? Is Rashad Penny going to be the guy? Whatever the case may be, I would say if there's somebody that I would rather draft DeAndre Swift. Air opportunities, all that stuff. So I feel really confident with DeAndre Swift in my tier 5.
Okay. Yeah, I would have him towards like the top end of my tier 5.
Okay.
Who else have you got in this tier though?
I also have Javonte Williams in this tier.
Okay. Yeah, I hear
Obviously,
you there.
question marks of when he's going to be coming back. What's that timeline looking like? Is he even going to be back this season? But if he is back, he's probably going to bring you some value in the second half of the season. That's why he's in the tier 5. When healthy, I think he can be tier 3, a tier 3 type guy.
Yeah, not only do you have to ask the question, is he going to be ready week 1, but will he be himself to begin the season? It's unlikely that he's himself to begin the season, especially the kind of injury that he sustained. It was very much similar to what J.K. Dobbins had last year, and J.K. never really became himself. To be honest, I think we're going to see this year be the first time he actually feels like himself as a running back. We hope the best for Javonte, but it's really tough to draft him right now in redraft formats. I'll give you that.
Agreed.
A couple of the names that I have in this tier would be Dameon Pierce.
Okay.
He's towards the beginning of the tier for me. I have Rashad White, who I have right ahead of DeAndre Swift. I have David Montgomery, who I have right ahead of Swift as well. Those kind of 4 guys feel like the best picks in this tier, but of course, there's more risk with the other names. Like, for example, I have Dalvin Cook here. At the moment, like we always say, these rankings are fluid. They will change. They will consistently change as we get into the NFL season. I have no idea how to rank Dalvin Cook. It sounds like he wants serious money at the running back position, which no one was really getting anyway. And now we're deep into the offseason. I don't know if he's going to get what he wants. And what does that mean for his involvement with the team? It's really difficult to project at the moment.
Agreed.
And the other player I would have in this tier would be James Cook. I'm not sure where you stand there.
Okay, so I have 2 players now in this tier, which is Dameon Pierce, or in different tiers, which is Dameon Pierce in tier 4, and then James Cook in tier 4. And I know we will probably disagree on that. And the other person I have in tier 5 is going to be Alexander Madison. And I know we're going to disagree on that. Look.
Yeah, we will.
And it's difficult, and I'm going to bring a video on Alexander Madison later on. It's really hard for me to kind of put my words together with Alexander Madison. I understand the history without Dalvin is phenomenal. I just don't see him truly maintaining that workload in the 17-game season. And I do believe they're going to get other people involved. This is a pass-happy offense. If he's a top guy, that's great, and maybe that changes in my perspective as we get closer to the season. But like Zach said, this is fluid right now, and things could be changing. But for me, Alexander Madison is my first running back in my tier 5, so that's how I feel with him right now.
Okay, so if you are going to choose someone to bring up to tier 4, maybe choose one of these names, and I will make Madison the one that I choose to bring up.
Sure.
Because I'm going to talk about Madison in a second, but I'm much more confident in him than you are.
Yeah, I think for me, it will probably have to be Dameon Pierce.
Okay, so we'll bring James Cook down. You have a lot of confidence in Cook. So you're like so confident in him over White, over Monty, over Swift that he's a different tier.
Yeah, he is. He is going to be able to get a lot of work in the air. Damian Harris is not a pass catching back. Not saying he can't catch anything, not saying he's not going to, but I think we can see James Cook getting, about 60 receptions, not 60 targets in the air, and kind of seeing how that pans out, and not even the workload on the ground to either. I'm not saying that Damian Harris, is going to just take all the workload on the ground. I think James Cook is going to play a big part of that, which we saw last year where they were kind of rotating Devin Singletary and James Cook, and he had a good break. Like, I think he was top 5 or top 8 in breakaway runs over 15 yards. I think that could potentially continue here this year, especially with this offense. So I'm really excited for James.
I'm a little bit more skeptical just because I think James is already dealing with one of those quarterbacks who is going to vulture touchdowns, going to vulture rushing yards. Now you bring in Damian Harris, who, when he's been healthy, has been very good at the goal line. So really the only thing you're hoping for James Cook that's going to carry you is receptions. And that's just hoping and believing that this team the identity is going to change in Josh Allen, and he's actually going to be able to stop rushing as much and focus on, dump offs. It's a nice thing to say, but I'm not so sure that it's going to happen. I think it takes away some of his, dynamic play. But we obviously see James Cook very differently there. I'm much more of like someone who believes that Damian Harris will have an important role in this offense.
Fair.
As far as Alexander Mattison goes, I think he has to be in tier 4. I really do. I think he has to be in tier 4. You look at his splits without Dalvin Cook, since they've been on the same team together, 6 games where there's been no Dalvin Cook, and Alexander Mattison is averaging over 20 PPR points per game. And he's also been involved in the air, averaging 4.5 targets per game. And, you have to think about it. Those were in years where Dalvin was the feature of this team. Now you look, and this team is much more pass-oriented. I think we could see Alexander Mattison easily hit 4 to 5 targets a game here in 2023, and I think he'll be the starter. As much as I love Ty Chandler, I've rostered him a bunch of dynasty leagues. I think Madison's going to be your starter on a very good offense. Minnesota's defense gave up the second most yards per game last year. Only the Lions gave up more yards. They're going to have to be in come from behind scenarios, pass happy, and Madison's going to get a lot of opportunity in the air. Not only that, but he's the clear RB1 on the ground. I mean, he's my RB21 in redraft formats. I'm not, as high as others who have him top 15, but I think he needs to be in that top 20, 20 to 22 range pretty heavily for me.
I hear you.
The only other names that I would just add as honorable mentions, they didn't make the top 24, but Pacheco and Khalil Herbert, just to put their names in there. I think they're worthy of being at least honorable mentions. So
fair.
Here in tier 4, this is where I would have Cam Akers.
Brother Cam.
Not sure where you have him. He's at the end of my tier 4. So I have Madison over Akers. It's very close. They're back to back. So I could go either way, but I do have them in the same tier. This is where I would have James Conner.
Yeah.
I've talked about James Conner as a really good pick in fantasy this year. His splits without Kyler Murray, like he was the offense for the Cardinals last year. This might be controversial. I don't know where people stand, but this is where I have Kenneth Walker. I don't know what to expect. I think if anyone out there is honestly telling themselves that they know exactly how this year is going to go with Kenneth Walker, I just think they're lying to themselves. Honestly, I think they love Ken Walker, which is fine,
right,
but they're lying to themselves. I don't think that anyone truly knows what this backfield is going to look like in week 6 in your playoffs. This is where I would have Joe Mixon. At this point, if he was going to be cut, I feel like it would have happened. I think he's going to step into being the starting running back in this team.
Great.
Now in Dynasty, I'm a little bit more concerned, right? Because it seems like he's a cut candidate for next year. But this is also where I would have Dobbins. I think he's going to break out this year. This is going to be just a much better offense than it has been in the past. And I think Dobbins will be an important part of that. Now that he's finally healthy, he's finally himself. He gets a lot of flack, but when he gets back to his form pre-injury, man, there wasn't many more efficient running backs in the entire NFL before that injury, his rookie season. Miles Sanders I have in this tier. I think he's going to get a ton of volume. If you're looking for a safe volume play, a lot of people are going to point to Najee Harris. To me, the cheaper and the better pick would be Miles Sanders. I don't see how he doesn't get 270 plus touches in that offense with that contract. He has the 5th highest overall value of any running back contract, I believe. I checked that yesterday. And then the last one I have in this tier is Aaron Jones. I think he's going to be just fine in fantasy this year. You know, he is the more dynamic running back in that backfield. With it's kind of the same thing with Miles Sanders, right? I mean, with a rookie quarterback, a quarterback who doesn't have much experience, you're going to try and establish the run. I think Aaron Jones will be a feature in this offense. So that is my tier 4. I'm curious what sort of disagreements you might have with it.
Yeah. So I would agree. Aaron Jones, Miles Sanders, Cam Akers, and James Conner. So the two people that technically 3, J.K. Dobbins, Joe Mixon, and Kenneth Walker are all in my tier 3. Look, I would agree in the sentiment that you were talked about Kenneth Walker. We have no idea what's going to happen. I just don't think
that's what I'm saying. Like, Miles is going to get
I know Miles
ton of opportunity.
Exactly. I still believe actually Kenneth Walker could potentially finish higher than all these people in tier 4. Even with Zach Charbonnet there, which is crazy. Now, how can we back that up? No idea, right? Like, it's
That's
just
my problem. There's no foundation.
And that is the problem, right? But I still, once again, it's going off of belief, and that's kind of what we have to do with both of these guys, Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, because of the history. And I think that's as much as I'm going to lean on. Now, am I willing to argue for him? Absolutely not. But I do have him in my tier 3. The two people I would argue for will be J.K. Dobbins and and Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon, top 10 running back this past year. Completely agree what you said about, if they wanted to cut him, he would have walked already. They bring in Chase Brown, which means that, they're going to lean on Joe Mixon for a whole nother year this year. J.K. Dobbins, the second half of the season, running with a bum leg, rushing for over 100 yards. This offense gets better, more eyes on the weapons now with Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, OBJ, with J.K. Dobbins in the backfield. There's going to be opportunity for him to eat. There's going to be opportunities for him to get touchdowns as well. So I'm really believing in the next step for J.K. Dobbins here this year.
I hear you. And Dobbins is one of my breakout candidates this year. I think Mixon is a safer play, given the volume we've seen in the past. If you had to choose between one of these guys to bring into tier 3, who would it be?
Sheesh.
You got to go to bat for one of them.
It would probably be Joe.
Okay.
Just based off the offense, there's no really competition. I know this is a pass-heavy offense, but Joe gets so many opportunities on the ground and the goal line. So,
sure, I hear you. Okay, I'm happy to meet you there in the middle. All right, here in tier 3, this is where I would have Jahmyr Gibbs. And keep in mind these are PPR rankings, right? In a PPR format, we could legitimately see Jahmyr Gibbs hit 90 targets as a rookie. Like, that's definitely within the realm of outcomes for a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs. So I would have him here in tier 3. Again, I didn't mean to really talk trash on Najee, but I have him here in tier 3. I'm just saying I think Miles Sanders, even though I have him ranked lower, is the better volume floor play and the better pick. He costs less in fantasy this year. And this might be controversial. This is where I have Breece Hall. Honestly, I don't know what to do with Breece Hall at this point. Okay, so you're not only have. Sorry, people are only focusing on one question. The only question they're focusing on is, will he be ready week 1? That's not the only question here. Like, it's truly not the only question.
Yeah,
the second question that you need to ask is, when will he be the Breece Hall we saw last year? Because if you have him in your top 5 rankings, I think, there's maybe only one example in history of that being the case with Adrian Peterson.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot think of many running backs who tore their ACL and came back the very next year and were top 5, Yeah. I have question marks. Now, he might be a fantastic pick because by week 7, 8, 9, he's winning people fantasy championships, but I don't know that, you're going to feel all that confident with him in the first 4 weeks, and a lot changes for people's fantasy teams in the first 4 weeks. So from a drafting perspective, I think he can finish. Like, if we were doing rankings for playoffs, for fantasy football playoffs, Breece Hall's probably in the top 5 then, right? But this early in the season where you can trade for him if he doesn't have the same opportunity, I mean, how long did it take for Saquon to really ramp up, right? It took quite some time. How long did it take for Dobbins? Different injury, but it took quite some time.
I hear you.
I'm just a little bit more hesitant than people who have him like top 5. At the moment, he's my RB12, and even then, I feel like it's a little bit risky in redraft. In Dynasty, it's a different, scenario. But I prefer Ramondre over him.
Talk
I
it
think
up.
he's a clear starter there. I think he's going to get a ton of volume. I prefer ETN over him. I think he's, again, like rookie season pretty much last year, over 1,400 all-purpose yards. I think he only gets better, more efficient, more touchdowns. And then Nick Chubb is the last guy I have in this tier 3. You could probably make a case for Nick Chubb in tier 2. But he's just never been someone that's got a lot of volume in the air. Does that change now that Kareem's gone? The identity of this team, I think, will slightly alter, not drastically. They'll still be a very run-focused team, but it might alter slightly, and that might impact Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is one of those running backs where if he's not getting you a touchdown on the ground, you're probably not in love with his fantasy output that week, right? He's never someone who's going to get, he had 6 receptions this week for, 100 yards. He's not that type of running back. It's not within his locker. So, right. This is what my tier 3 looks like. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with?
Okay. I actually agree with everything besides Nick Chubb. I have Nick Chubb in tier 2. Yes, this offense is going to look different. And, in the early parts of the offseason, I was saying I'm kind of skeptical on Nick Chubb. I'm not necessarily sure. But he finished RB6 this past year. Obviously, that was with Jacoby Brissett, over 300 attempts on the ground. I think that continues to be the same. And if that's not the same, what's going to be different are the goal line opportunities. Because this offense is better. Deshaun Watson is going to get them in the red zone.
I think that's fair.
And I think that's what we're going to see the difference in. I mean, this past year, 12 touchdowns. Even if that was with, 30, 40 less attempts, I think he can finish still in the top 6, top 8 running backs with those touchdowns, because it's going to be different, or maybe even more touchdowns, right? So I would have to advocate for Nick Chubb, and I feel really confident. One thing I want to say about Breece Hall, completely agree. It's also a mental hurdle that he has to get through as well. I would say I'm willing to take a chance if he does fall to me, let's say, at the turn in my drafts from, the 212 maybe to the 305, right?
Right.
If I can get Breece Hall as my RB1 and then get a Pacheco on the second on the later rounds, or get Rashad White in those later rounds, and go with the 3 RBs and have Breece Hall in the second half of the season, that seems exciting. That seems sexy. Yeah. And then you can kind of rotate those guys in and out as you please. So I completely agree in that sentiment. But yeah, I have
I hear you.
Ramondre Stevenson, Najee Harris, and Jahmyr Gibbs and Travis Etienne all in the same tier as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, and I totally hear you. I think I'm someone who drafted a lot of J.K. Dobbins in like the 4th, 5th round of fantasy drafts last year, and that was my mindset. I was like, hey, when he's ready, I'm gonna be absolutely dominant.
Yeah.
But the issue is like you sacrifice a pick for a player that will be ready and available.
Yeah.
And then your team is like, 3 and 5, and you're like, oh shit, is he coming back? Is he gonna be himself? But it's, 2 different injuries. So, I mean, he could definitely heal. But honestly, I think like I said, I think I'm kind of on the edge with Nick Chubb. I think he definitely is deserving of tier 2. So I'll go ahead and pop him in tier 2 there. RB6 last year, man, that whole offense was built around him. Let's see if the identity stays the same. So here in tier 2, this is where I would have Josh Jacobs.
Yep.
Your rushing champion last year. I don't know. It sounds like the whole Jimmy thing is going to get resolved. He will be the starter for this team to begin the year.
I hope so. Yeah.
But regardless, Josh Jacobs is going to absolutely eat. He's going to feast. He's not a sexy pick, but he's probably the right pick for some people. I have Tony Pollard here in this tier. If you look at the back half of the season, he was a top 5 to 6 running back. I think from week 11 onwards, he was fantastic. This is where I would have Derrick Henry. I'm a little bit hesitant than your average person on Derrick Henry. I know this team wants to get younger. I know they want to find pillars to build around long term.
Yeah.
And I think we can all agree that a 29 soon to be 30-year-old running back is not the answer long term. If Derrick Henry is a focal point of this offense, they will never make a Super Bowl. Like that's just the reality. As much as you love Derrick Henry, we can all agree, right? Yeah. So I think there could be a philosophy change this year. But again, I still have him ranked as my RB6, so I'm not like super down on him. I'm just a little bit hesitant myself. And a couple other names I have in here would be Saquon Barkley, who finally found his form last year. Jonathan Taylor, who had a down year, but I actually think Anthony Richardson could benefit him the way this offense is going to be established, it will run through JT and A Rich on the ground. I think they'll be a top 5 rushing team volume-wise in the NFL this year. And then the last person I would have in this tier would be Bijan Robinson, who I like. I'm taking ahead of a lot of these players, but I can't put him in the same tier as the guys I have in tier 1.
Yeah. So I have my tiers constructed a little bit differently. I have my top 3 running backs that I believe can finish RB1 this year, and that's CMC, Austin Eckler, and Derrick Henry in tier 1. The rest that are in tier 2, I would say I agree with, outside of clearly Derrick Henry.
Right.
I think, yes, they want to change this offense, but still over 300, nearly 350 attempts this past year, finished RB4 this year as well. They're going to lean on Ryan Tannehill maybe early parts in the season, and if he does not play up to par, then they're going to have to lean on Will Levis, who I think is probably not going to do much throwing, right? I mean, we say that with every single rookie. It might be a little bit more difficult. I think Derrick Henry still has opportunity to finish RB1. Now, are the wheels going to fall off? Maybe it's this year. We've been saying that for the past 3 years now, right? We've been saying that for the past 2 years, however long you want to say it. If he is healthy, if he is getting the attempts, Derrick Henry could finish RB1 here. So that's how I'm seeing it. This is how I'm kind of playing out. I agree. CMC, Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, and then obviously the rest of those guys in tier 2.
So like even on, I hear you. Like this is how Badake would have it. I would have Derrick Henry down here just to play devil's advocate, right? Even last year on a points per game basis, he wasn't top 3. On a points per game basis, Eckler, CMC, and Jacobs were all higher than Derrick Henry. He might be the safer play, so I kind of hear you there. But man, I think if you look at the guys in the top 2 tiers, right? And if you ask me, who could it really fall apart for this year? Like, he is the screaming answer, in my opinion, of, man, the identity could really change and they could look a different way. Like, I'm not saying it will happen, but and it's unlikely that any of these players, like, they're in the top 2 tiers, right? It's unlikely that any of them lose their workhorse status. But if I had to choose anyone, Derrick might be the one that I choose. Sure. I mean,
but yeah, I think for me, I don't think the identity will change with Derrick Henry. In my opinion, I think that I think he has to get injured again for him not to get the attempts on the ground. He's 29, he's older, and they know this is not going to be a viable situation for the years to come. But you have him on your team now, so we're gonna run him to the ground. I think that's how they're thinking. And if they do change it, that means that Derrick Henry is losing so much opportunity, and Chig and Treylon Burks is gonna be eating, which means Derrick Henry. I feel like if that is truly the change, then does Derrick Henry not get 300 plus attempts on the ground? Like, that's how big of a change it is, right? Like, is it gonna be a 250, 280? It's like, dang, he lost 50 attempts. He lost 70 attempts. I think that's too drastic not to have one of the best guys on your team still not running the ball if he is healthy. So
but new GM, right? It's not the same GM that Derrick Henry's put all of this work under. Like, the new GM is very aware of where they are as a team. Yeah. So look, it's never popular to be the guy who's like, this player could fall off this year. But that's what I'm saying. I'm like, everyone's beloved Derrick Henry. It could be the season. Now, he could be fine, but I mean, I would just personally still be drafting a Bijan, a JT, a Saquon over him myself, but to each their own. This is where Badake would have Derrick Henry. I would have him down here. I'm curious to hear what other people's thoughts are. But yeah, I mean, let's see what happens with Durka for sure. But drop a like on the video. Thanks for watching. These are completely fluid. They will change over time. And, we'll see you guys in the next video. All love. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy. Even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.